and of course, and review of the meeting notes.
All right, very good. Welcome everyone. Happy New Year. This is the first meeting of 2025. So yay, we've got a exciting year of enhancements in CycloneDX. We've got a lot of great work for the task groups that they're working on. So this should be an exciting year for us. Just a kind of reminder that the TC54 follows our code of conduct. The legal disclaimer for video recording is here. First order is to review the prior meeting minutes, which was on December 12th. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to look these over. Lars, I did remember that you were no longer just an invited expert. So
I do notice that Dennis's affiliation is wrong.
oh, it is. Okay. All right. We will correct that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's correct Dennis's. Are there any other changes that need to be done to this document? Let's see.
This is just a bizarre or observation for the notes from last week, but that streets, what's it called? Bog? Streets bog. There's a really popular New York City website called Streets Blog.
Okay.
I doubt, like, I'm probably the only person that will get confused about the two in that Venn diagram of overlap, but it is quite popular here for people that pay attention to like urban design and, you know,
Nice.
stuff.
So what was wrong? What was the issue with Dennis's affiliation? Oh,
It should
I
be
see.
Bloomberg. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Right.
just slip
Okay.
the last
Yeah.
name there into the organization field.
Yeah, I see that. I see that. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. And it has been corrected. All right, very good. So with that, any objection to approval of these minutes then? All right, I hear none. Let's going back to the today's agenda. Any newcomers on the call today? I don't see any. Announcements. I have one, but does anybody else have any announcements?
I had one just throw out there that might be interesting. There's a proposed PIP right now from Seth Larson, who's a security engineer in residency at the Python Foundation. If you haven't seen it, it might be worthwhile. CycloneDX is mentioned in how Python is going to start looking at, I'll say it like non-easily traceable dependencies. So Go, binaries, and other things embedded inside Python packages. So if you haven't seen it, I'll put a link into it to review.
Awesome. Yeah, I think they're called phantom dependencies or something along those lines, right? Yeah. Very good. Yeah, thanks, Ian. I've got one minor announcement, and I guess I can kind of show you the CycloneDX organization. We launched a brand new website like 4 or 5 days ago. So on Sunday, we launched a brand new website. There's a lot of new content here, including a lot of brand new examples and updated examples. So this goes beyond, the specification and that sort of thing. So there's a ton of really, really great material here. In addition, We have a new section of the website called Participate, with things that you can contribute to, mailing lists, Slack, GitHub, etc. The working groups that CycloneDX has, along with information on each one of those working groups and how to get involved with those working groups, as well as information on TC54, because obviously CycloneDX is a big part of TC54, but here are some of the other things that 54 is obviously working on. So I just wanted to kind of raise awareness to the new site. We're trying to promote some of the working groups that we're doing. We're trying to promote the work that we're doing here in TC54. So you're welcome to refer people to the site if you like, and let me know, because I'm the one that's, you can either blame or whatever for a lot of the content on the site. But if I'm missing anything as you're going through the site, let me know, and I will get those things corrected.
Steve, that site is active now?
It is, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. It was launched on Thursday, on Sunday, and I believe Google started their re-index of the site last night. I'm not sure where Bing is on their re-indexing. Both have been instructed to re-index the site. I'm not sure if Google has finished, and I don't know the status of Bing yet. But yeah, the site is definitely live. In terms of updates from the feature working groups, the threat modeling working group, we are actively working on creating a POC for what threat modeling could theoretically look like if represented in CycloneDX. This information is also going to be useful for and what's not actually on here is actually the cryptography working group. We've actually re-stood up the cryptography working group with IBM and a few others, because we've identified a few missing things that we would like to add to the spec, and it ties in a little bit to some of the work that we're doing with threat modeling. Blueprints, this group has not made as much progress as the others. The OSS Sustainability Working Group is continuing to work on the different use cases for what it is to represent sustainability information from a maintainer's perspective, and to be able to assert that information in their given repositories. I'm still not sure whether or not this information is going to be part of the CycloneDX specification or potentially a complementary separate specification that we might be able to stand up another TG for. So still to be determined at this point.
I would just say
patents
also, hopefully on that
Yeah.
on that one, we met with the FOSS funders group, which is like a group of
Yeah.
OSPO professionals that hopefully was helpful for
That's amazing.
the team. Yeah.
Okay.
That was like long in progress.
The patents working group, this is, we've actually had some really good sessions with WIPO, I believe the standards organization is. They're a patents standards body. They work with all the government patent offices around the world. This group is also in the early stages of creating a POC for how the summary information can be represented in CycloneDX, as well as references to the detailed information from the various patent offices. So that work is continuing. And like I mentioned, I haven't updated this. This was a while back, but we've also stood up our cryptography bill of material working group. CBOM was added to CycloneDX 1.5. It's been used in 1.5, 1.6, and as more and more people start adopting it and start using it for different things, we have identified a few gaps that we would like to address. So the group has been re-stood up, and we are working through 3 big chunks of work right now. The first is, again, identifying a few of those gaps. We believe that we can fill those gaps in a way that's going to be completely backward compatible. The other two are a little bit bigger chunks of work, and I mentioned one of them a while back. One is standardization of elliptic curve names. The EC names are typically found only in the standards themselves, or in some cases in the research papers that actually describe said curve. So there is not a canonical list of curves. It just does not exist. There is one university. I cannot recall the university's name. They are in Europe, where a PhD student and a couple of his colleagues had attempted a list of standardizing those elliptic curve names, but that university obviously is not a standards body, so we couldn't use that for CycloneDX. But there is a need, now that CBOM is being used, there is a need to standardize those names. The other chunk of work is also very related, and it's actually a little bit more important than the standardization of elliptic curve names, and that's the standardization of algorithm names. So basically coming up with an enumeration of what all of these elliptic curve and what all the algorithm names are, and while also having that extensible. So those two things are going to be a little bit more work. And there's a couple different approaches that we can do to achieve those, I believe. I'm kind of leaning towards, at this moment, I'm leaning towards a design pattern that we use for SPDX license IDs, where the SPDX license IDs themselves live independently of the CycloneDX specification, because those license IDs evolve over time. And it doesn't make sense for us to have a new version of the CycloneDX every time a new license list is published. That's not what we do. So we actually have a sub schema for SPDX license IDs when we want to strictly validate those. I'm considering a similar approach to elliptic curve names and to algorithm names, because those things will also evolve over time. With that, I'll yield if there's any questions. If not, we can get updates from the task groups. Okay, so it doesn't look like Ole is here. So let me briefly provide an update for TG1. We've made a lot of progress on the publishing and the consumption APIs, actually defining what those are. We are going to start working on there's one part of the API that's called Insights. That's kind of like where you ask the API questions. We're going to start working on the model for that in February. And that model is essentially going to be CycloneDX 2.0. So Transparency Exchange API will basically have a CycloneDX model, CycloneDX-like model, but it's essentially what's going to be the basis for a future CycloneDX 2.0. And we are also tentatively planning a plug fest, a hackathon of sorts, in Barcelona at the end of May that corresponds with AppSec Global Europe at the end of May. So more information on that will be available. And with that, as if there is any questions on TG1, if not, I'll pass it off to Philippe. All right, go ahead, Philippe.
Yes. So hello, everyone. So it's been reasonably slow with the holiday break on the Perl front, except there's two interesting bits to report. The first one is we held a community meeting which folks which are interested to help further the triage of issues and help the specification move forward. There was actually a good number of folks from Red Hat, which seem to be very invested in Perl, which is awesome. So we decided, that was the first attempt, but we decided to lead these meetings on a regular basis. The next one is supposed to take place next Wednesday. And these are work dispatching meetings, so we can farm some of the specific work to contributors in the community. So that's one thing. The second thing is on the work on the spec, we started doing a few things. One is to address each of the components of the package URL one by one, to focus the work on the spec on these rather than working on all the package types, which are often, it's a very active domain. There's new requests on a weekly basis there, but these will not be part of the spec initially, and we don't want to dilute too much of our efforts there. The interesting thing is we tried, for instance, to suggest adopting the language of RFC 2119. For these of you that are not familiar with the RFC in question, it's the must, should definition RFC. And I know it's not exactly something standard for Ecma, but that's something good as a stepping stone for us to clarify the language of the Perl spec, even though it may not make in this exact form or this exact definition the final spec, Ecma spec. And so just reporting on that, we try to adopt this language in an updated version of the current specification, just focusing on updating the language and introducing RFC definitions for these words. And there was an interesting pushback of a few community participants, which went on many different directions and tangents, which were not related really to the issue. But the outcome is that going forward, we're going to work on a much smaller scope, meaning what is a scheme, what is a type, what is a name, what is a version, so we can move and progress more efficiently without having this kind of backlash on trying to introduce definition that address the whole spec at once. The second thing is, along these lines, we're trying to streamline the spec significantly, where there's many areas in the current spec for Perl where we're saying, hey, this is what the spec should be, and these are things that should not be. The problem is having negative assertions in the spec is eventually something that doesn't work, because there's an infinity of things that are not Perl. And the new approach is to split positive, affirmative definition of what is a type, what is a name, especially when it comes to encoding, and move out to an FAQ discussion about what is not a Perl and what is not part of the spec, and make that outside of the spec. So the spec is going to be simpler, easier to understand, but advice to implementers, more kind of discussions, which are today mixed up and interleaved in the spec, move out in the FAQ section. And we can decide whether we want this FAQ session to be part of the spec or not. I don't think it should be. But in any case, it's from an overall presentation understanding, it's streamlined a lot to separate discussions, recommendations, negative assertions with the spec, which is focused on what is a Perl, as opposed to what is not a Perl. So that's it. I don't know if any of you have questions there. But lot of learning there along the way by discovering what a good spec could look like. Oh, just as a side note, also there's also some efforts eventually to contribute a formal grammar for the core syntax for Perl using an eBNF grammar, eBNF or eBNF, some kind of BNF variants, which would be interesting and useful, especially given the fact that there are a few cross-language generators of parsers and validators using this grammar syntax, which would help a lot with having a kind of common set of implementation that are true to the spec because they're true to the grammar.
Got it. Thanks for the update, Philippe. Any questions for Philippe? All right. Is Benji on? I didn't see him earlier, but or Jordan? Yeah, I don't see them. Let's see. Update on TG3. I don't really have, honestly, too much of an update on TG3. I think we've met like once or twice. Not a lot has progressed other than, you know, from where we were. The group has been working on the Google Doc that we've been working out of and trying to flesh out a few things, including what's going to be in scope and what's out of scope. But other than that, we've basically removed the community meetings and we've kind of repurposed that time slot so that we're using that time now for the Ecma meetings. So it's basically just an Ecma only type of environment at this point. That's my only update for TG3. Any questions on that? All right. Any new business folks would like to bring forward? This might be a short meeting.
Or a timely meeting because we're supposed to have a 30-minute meeting. So it's a meeting that's on time. Which, by any account, is always something which is an oddity. No meeting is supposed to start and finish on time.
Oh, yeah. Dare you start and finish on time.
Although I do think these meetings are 1-hour meetings, but we're still good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. So with that, if there's no new business, I think we can call it. Thank you all for attending. Happy New Year again, and looking forward to all the work that we're going to be doing collaboratively over the next year. So with that, have a great rest of your day.
Okay.
Thank you. See you in the
Thank you,
next
everyone.
meeting.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye now.